It's not getting better, it's getting worse.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth, which returns this week. I'm excited about that, but not what I have to talk about in the first segment today. Duke should not be overlooked in the ACC. Some more G5 thoughts on a Monday. Yes, that is allowed on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. You know, I don't think anyone ever wants to hear the phrase, "I told you so." So I'll come up with a different phrase. Previously, on iterations of this podcast, I argued that certain realities may come to fruition and ideas could be suggested because of the illogical nature of which the sport has been moving for some time with regards to the playoff. Here we go, Jim. Here we go. According to reports, the Big Ten has floated the idea of 24 to 28 team college football playoff formats. You know, I'm gonna start with the optimistic angle. I'm gonna begin with what I hope is happening here. I hope the Big Ten is putting this out there. It doesn't have a lot of weight behind it yet, but if you watched Schoolhouse Rock as a kid like I did, you know that every bill that has ever become a law started in the same place. It has to get out of committee, but they all start before the phase where the committee debates it and decides to move it along. So this is how it begins. Going to 12 teams once began as, hey, maybe we should go from 4 to 12. Here we are. Here we are. So what I'm hoping this is from the Big Ten is trying to put pressure on the SEC to acquiesce to what they want, which is for them to move to a 9-game conference schedule in the Southeastern Conference. The SEC has talked about that for a while. Doesn't appear that they have substantively changed their position on the matter, but the Big Ten has said in this offseason news cycle, hey, we think the SEC and everyone in the ACC should be playing 9 conference games just like we are. I'm not here to have the scheduling debate. I hope the Big Ten is putting out something so ludicrous, insane, and horrible for the sport to try and encourage action from the other party. That's my optimistic view of this story coming out. Because I don't know what other positive spin to put on the abomination of an idea of a 24 to 28 team playoff. I hope this doesn't get any traction. I hope this is the only time I can even come on a show and react to it. I hope this is the only week I could discuss such a proposal. I don't think I'm going to be. Because as I mentioned earlier, this is not a number that I'm actually surprised that we're seeing. I'm a little surprised we're seeing it already. And the point I have made for a long time, as my everydayers know, is that playoff expansion won't stop at 12 because they want to go to 14 or 16. We still don't know what the playoff format is going to be for next year, by the way. Next year, 365 days from now, we will again be 1 week from the college football season. That's 372 days by my account. Well, with the 5 actually away. 370 days. 370 days from the 2026 college football season, and we have no idea what that playoff format's going to be. My argument has long been they're not going to be content at 12. They're not going to be content at 14 or 16 because someone is going to point out, hey, look at what they do in the FCS playoffs. They've got a 24-team structure. We should do that. Here we are. This happened way sooner than I expected. I'm not sure that was the Big Ten's thinking, But here we go. Shout out to Chris Vanini over at The Athletic. This is not exactly random small corner of the internet Joe Schmo podcaster. He's a senior writer at The Athletic who was discussing this recently in written format and tweeted, quote, "I don't like it, but I think I prefer the mega playoff model over the weird 16-team format because you're basically making the FCS playoff at that point," end quote. And there it is. There it is. Just because it happens in another sport doesn't mean it should happen in this one. There are ideas from other sports, from other leagues, that I think can be brought to college football and enhance the sport. But you have to actually analyze on a case-by-case basis when that's going to happen, when it's actually in the best interest of the sport. A 24 to 28 unranked teams would make the play. Excuse me? There are several examples that I could jump to. A 3-loss UNLV team from last year, who was a good team, by the way. Got Barry Odom the job over at Purdue. My guy Nick Arvin at Locked On Boilermakers thinks they're upsetting USC, by the way. Check out that recent segment on the YouTube channel here at Locked On College Football. But UNLV played 2 games against Boise State, one in the regular season. It was an awesome setting at Allegiant Stadium, and one in the Mountain West Championship game on Boise's home turf. They lost both. If you had a 24 to 28 team college football playoff format, that team would have at least been considered, if not into the playoff. I mean, you talk about taking college football and trying to just make it the NCAA tournament, an event I love and cherish, but is based on its postseason. The greatness of college football is that on a week-to-week basis, you have more urgency to win a game than any other sport in the world. More than European soccer, more than the NFL, more than the NBA, more than any other sport. Every time you expand the playoff, you chip away at that little by little. I do not give a you-know-what if you are suddenly adding playoff importance to games that involve teams who can't even get ranked inside the top 20. I'm not saying the committee's perfect, but they get it right more often than not. You know at the end of every college football season who's capable of winning a national championship. I know at the end of every season because we've watched them for the previous 12 to 13 weeks. This is something just remember this as we go into the year. We're in ranking season, we're in list season, we're almost to actual football season. Just remember that by December, by conference championship weekend, you will know which teams are actually capable of winning it all. And there is no world in which any of you would put a top 24 team into that, or a top 25 team. This is a horrifically bad idea that should not get anywhere and should be called out for being what it is, a disastrous idea that would make the college football sport that we all love that much worse. I can't wait for real football, and I hope this idea never comes to fruition. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, all of that good stuff. I have one question, but a very strong take on Duke. First, this episode brought to you by Drip Drop. If you're trying to stay on top of your routine, whether that's workouts, long days on campus, or staying focused through back-to-back classes, hydration is where it all starts, and that is where Drip Drop comes in. Drip Drop is a doctor-developed and scientifically proven fast hydration formula. It uses the perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of a leading sports drink, because you don't want to have just sugar pouring into your body all the time. Drip Drop is here to help you with that. So I'm a golfer. My everydayers out there probably know that. And when I'm out there, especially I'm about to go back to Utah for broadcast season. It's going to be hot. I've got to be able to stay hydrated or I'm just not going to be able to play well. And Drip Drop helps me get through those rounds hydrated throughout, and that's really important. They can help you too. Right now, Drip Drop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to dripdrop.com. Use the promo code LockedOnCollege. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LockedOnCollege for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard. Check them out at dripdrop.com. I have just one question about the Duke Blue Devils. If they answer that this year, please don't be surprised when they're at the top of the ACC standings, or near the top at least. JJ Jackson of Locked On Blue Devils is here. So here's my question, JJ. I like Duke. I've sung the praises all off season. I landed 9-3 with this schedule. I was this close, but I had to be like, whoa, okay, hold on, let's let them prove a little bit of something. I was this close to 10-2. I was on the edge of doing that. Here's a question I want you to answer that I think is among the top ones for Duke going into this year. It's not Darian Mensah at quarterback. No Jordan Moore, no Eli Pankel at wide receiver. Those guys were a terrific tandem last year. How are the Blue Devils replacing that production? Those two guys combined over 1,500 yards last season.
Yeah, that's a big question for me as well, because you obviously spend big to get the quarterback, but the question becomes, who's he going to be throwing the football to? I'm really excited about the returners that Duke has in the likes of Samir Hagans and Quayshawn Brown, who goes by Queso, which is an awesome nickname, at the wide receiver spot, returning. And then also Duke goes out in the transfer portal, picks up Andrew Anthony, the former Oklahoma wide receiver, who was poised to be one of the top wideouts for the Sooners last season had he not been injured. Also bringing a guy named Cooper Barkate from the transfer portal. So I think as a whole, there are names in that wide receiver room that aren't known now, and that is totally fine. But give it 3, 4, 5 weeks into the year, and it'll become more of a conversation about, oh, wow, these are really dynamic playmakers that Darian Mensah is getting to throw the football to.
I'm trying to figure out why our friends at FanDuel have Duke's win total only at 6.5. North Carolina, you'll love hearing this, is my favorite under bet in the ACC, even with their favorable schedule. I am fading that entire situation with Bill Belichick. Duke might be my favorite over bet in the conference because the schedule is very favorable, but it does make me wonder, JJ, is there something Vegas knows that I don't know? I would have thought this is at least a 7.5 win total team. First year head coach comes in and wins 9 games. They get a guy who had SEC offers in the transfer portal at quarterback in Darian Mensah, who will play on his old stomping grounds for Game 3 in what we will call the Darian Mensah Bowl in an underrated non-conference college football game. That's Duke at Tulane. I am going to be so dialed into that game. What questions do you have about this Duke team that maybe the odds makers are going, we're not ready to view them as an elite team in the ACC just yet, because frankly, their schedule is SMU-esque from a season ago. It's not a carbon copy, but it is in that sort of vein.
I can't figure out why it is so low, Spencer. I mean, that's the big question I've been having for quite some time. It's something that I know we also have been circling back to on a nearly weekly basis on the Locked On ACC squad, is why in the world is Duke sitting at 6.5 wins, given what the schedule looks like and the key pieces that they've got returning and that sort of thing. To give people an idea of this program, Duke has 26 wins over the last 3 seasons. That is the third most in the ACC. When was that ever been the case about Duke? That's always been the standard in basketball within the conference. And here they are with this great success lately in their football program. So why the disrespect is still there and it's still sitting at 6.5, I really can't quite figure out, because you look at the offense, you upgrade there at the quarterback position. Defensively, so many key guys coming back in that defensive front and in the secondary for Duke. If there is a question, I think you would look to what can Duke do in terms of a ground game. They were second to worst offensively running the football in the conference last season, and still turned out a 9-3 regular season. So still found ways to win football games in that regard. Running the football maybe would kind of be that one weakness I look at right now for them.
I look at the schedule, and the front half is a lot tougher than the back half. Once they get to the Clemson game, from then on out, boy, if Duke plays the way they're capable of, the way they did last year when they won 9 games, there could be some smooth sailing here. So they have one of my favorite non-conference games of the year in week 2. They open with Elon. Of course, they'll be fine. At home against preseason number 12, Illinois, who's gotten a lot of respect from people like me. I think Illinois is a 10-win team this year. The AP voters, other national pundits, I think Illinois deserves that level of respect. If Duke wins that game, JJ, suddenly we're going to look at those games against Georgia Tech and Clemson a lot differently. They'll have to avoid what would be an emotional letdown potential the next week at Tulane, because that's a darn good Tulane team that's one of the G5 playoff favorites this year. But if they win that game, which is at home, oh boy. I mean, the train could be on the tracks full steam ahead.
And I hope it is. I hope that this program continues to get a lot of buzz in football. Duke's been pouring more and more resources into the program. You had a very successful 2-year run under Mike Elko. He gets the bigger opportunity in the SEC. And now we've got Manny Diaz, who has an unbelievable 9-3 regular season in year 1. We'll see how he finishes up here as the second season gets going. But yeah, what a big test that is to be playing Illinois. A high noon kickoff there to get this thing rocking and rolling, in a big statement opportunity for the Blue Devils. To your point, if they win a game like that, man, I think a lot of people are going to be building momentum in what they'll be able to do throughout the course of the year.
They play NC State at home for their first ACC game. I think they win that one. 2 road games before they play Georgia Tech. On paper, JJ, I've got them down as 3-0 in that stretch. I really won't be shocked if it's 2-1. I just don't know. Syracuse and Cal are big mystery teams to me in the ACC. So I don't feel confident enough at this point in the year picking them to beat Duke. But certainly, Syracuse can be a tough place to play.
Yeah.
Fran Brown's a really good coach. You go all the way across the country, I think anything could happen in those sorts of games. Miami almost lost to Cal, for goodness sake. Cal did lose to Florida State in a cross-country trip last year, and Florida State was atrocious. So that stretch of games, I think, after the win or lose against Illinois, at Syracuse, at Cal, Georgia Tech at home, that 3-game stretch, I don't expect them to win at Clemson. That, I think, defines Duke's season this year.
The Georgia Tech game last year in Atlanta, Duke had so many different opportunities to win that one. I look at the SMU game as another one that Duke kind of got away last season from having a 10-win season in the first year under Manny Diaz. So if they're able to take care of business and clean up some of those mistakes that they had defensively, and again, Darian Mensah plays to the level that everyone expects him to. These wide receivers do step up and produce. Duke does get Jaquez Moore going out of the backfield, running the football. Get through that stretch like we're highlighting, and you've got a lot of buzz and momentum when a big-time game like Clemson comes up on the schedule.
Yeah, and it's at Clemson. Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough. Yeah, that's tough because I think Clemson is going to be really, really good this year. I said back half earlier. I really meant back third of the schedule, but I think there's some manageable parts, as we discussed on the front end as well. But it's the final 4 games that I look at that 6.5 win total and think, boy, if Duke is just sitting at like 3 wins at this point in the schedule, they could still go. If they're at 4 or 5 wins, like I expect them to be, this is an easy over. They've got a random
the over.
Yeah, I'm in that camp too. At UConn, Virginia at home, at North Carolina, who I don't think is going to be any good, and Wake Forest in Jake Dickert's first year. I mean, you've got an inferior group of 5 team. It's on the road. I mean, they were respectable last year, but you know, it's UConn. You shouldn't have any problems in that game. Virginia, we'll see how much longer Tony Elliott can hang on. At North Carolina, I don't like that situation. Wake Forest at home. You got a couple of first-year head coaches to end the schedule. This is the part that I look at and go, boy, if that isn't 4-0, I think that would be kind of a disappointment for Duke.
Agreed. I want to get off to a good start with this Duke team, given the schedule and the hopes that they've got for the end of the year. I think it's been a big offseason, kind of transitioning to Darian Mensah with him getting there in January and working up to get the year started. So high expectations for Duke football to get off to a big start.
Bottom line, folks, do not, under any circumstance, overlook the Duke Blue Devils. We would never do such a thing here on this show with JJ Jackson of Locked On Blue Devils. One more thought.
Just we're more than a basketball school. That's what I want people to start to realize.
That's
26 wins over the last 3 years. More than just
John
in basketball.
John Gruden, who maybe wants to get back into coaching, that could be fun. He once told Teddy Bridgewater that he turned Louisville from a basketball school into a football school. And you know what? Let's see if Darian Mensah can be the Teddy Bridgewater of the Duke football program. JJ, appreciate the time, my man. I usually talk about the Group of Five on Friday this time of year. I do, however, as executive producer of the show, reserve the right to discuss them other days, how their future ties into the playoff coming up next. First, this episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Have you decided at the last minute you want to go to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day. You suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That is exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to go to the game with you. Game Time makes it all possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. I've used Game Time on several occasions myself, and I can tell you it gives you everything that you want from an online ticket provider. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So I got this question from one of you recently. Kyler said, question for the pod. With the expanded playoff, how has a great season for the Group of Five been redefined? It used to be that every 3 to 4 years, your roster might be developed and experienced enough to make a New Year's Six bowl game and potentially win. So now is it making the playoff, winning a playoff game, winning a natty? What say you? Well, going back to a point that I made earlier on the program, it is absolutely logical to look at other leagues and see what they do and determine on a case-by-case basis whether or not the sport could benefit by adopting that. Expanded playoff, bad for the sport, not good. Relegation, promotion and relegation. Can someone tell me what the downside is? I mean, seriously, what is the downside? I don't really know. I think the biggest problem that would arise in instituting a promotion relegation model in college football is who gets cut off. Who gets to be in the Power Four, or what you'd call the, Premier League over in Europe. Who's in the Champions League, who's in the next level. So for the sake of ease of conversation here on the show, we'll just say Power 4, G5, FCS. Those would be your three leagues, so to speak. Who gets to start out in which spot? Is it based on your current conference affiliation? Are we going to sit here and pretend like Boise State is the same as South Alabama? I don't think they are. I think Boise State's light years ahead of where the South Alabama program is. Should Boise have to go down to the Group of Five level and win a championship there and earn promotion up to the Power Four ranks? The games that involve teams who are not any good, with coaches coaching for their jobs sometimes, or teams are just kind of playing out the season, would it not be more exciting for the fan bases, television executives, and fans alike, who are all the interested parties really that care about what's on the line in a college football game, if you've got a couple of 3-8 teams going into the last week of the regular season, or a couple of 3-9 teams who have already struggled throughout the season, and they play one game and the winner gets to stay in the higher level and the loser has to go down? You're not up for that? I'm up for that. I'm up for that across the board. So to get back to your question, Kyler, if you're a group of, it depends on which Group of Five program you are. There are a select few that can define a successful season now in this iteration of the college football playoff as making the playoff. Boise is one of those programs. I don't know that there's another one out there. For this season, They've got Jake Retzloff now, so maybe Tulane fits into that discussion. Tulane's also in its second year of John Summerall as its head coach. Don't know how long they'll be able to keep him there because he's really good and will probably be an SEC head coach one day. And Willie Fritz, splashed them onto the scene and everybody realized, oh, hey, this Tulane, pun intended because they're the Green Wave. This Tulane program, this Tulane team, they beat USC. Holy smokes, that's really good. Okay, that's a newer phenomenon. I know they've had their day way back in the day before I was around, but for most of my life as a college football fan, I didn't really know what Tulane was or where Tulane was or what the potential was. Now I've seen it. But are there other programs out there that legitimately, at this point in time, say playoff or bust? Is James Madison in this conversation? I don't think they're in a playoff or bust situation necessarily. So this is why I would support separating the three leagues. Doesn't mean you can't still have games against one another. You could. I don't know if you have to, but you certainly could. They do that in it's like the FA Cup or something over in Europe. Like all those little details and whatnot can be worked out. But if you go into a season and say, well, we got to make the playoff or else this wasn't a successful season. You tell me only one group of 5 team gets to have a successful season? Like a truly... If, however, the G5 were playing in its own league, so to speak, where the champion gets promoted, a team making a run to the Final Four of that playoff structure suddenly feels a lot better. Invigorates the fan base a little bit more. Shows, hey, that promotion goal, that's possible. Look how close we got. So I think that sort of structure would benefit it greatly. Now, are we going to get there? It doesn't seem that way. We have had national reports about a 24 to 2018 playoff before. We have had... There was kind of a promotion relegation model discussed, or a merger of sorts between the Pac-12 and Mountain West a while back. That never materialized. It got to a PowerPoint presentation. I don't think it actually got anywhere beyond that. So let's presume, and this is why it's difficult to answer your question, Kyler, is we had the 12-team playoff for 1 year. That was a great year for Boise State. They get a bye into the quarterfinals. They shouldn't have, but they did. But getting there is in and of itself a successful year for the Broncos. And they didn't win a game, of course, but they had a bye. So that kind of has to be counted towards winning a game. But the playoff seeding was flawed. So let's say they go to the playoff this year and lose. Well, you'd call that a successful season. At some point, if Boise State is the Group of 5 playoff team 3 out of the next 5 years, at some point, they are going to define success as winning a game. But if a Group of 5 team that hasn't been there before flashes onto the scene, like James Madison, for instance, if they were to go undefeated this year and roll through the Sun Belt and they get the nod over the Mountain West or American Conference champion, well, that would be a successful season because they've proven that they can get there. And then the task becomes, okay, how do we build on this? How do we keep taking those steps forward? I don't think you can see a Group of 5 team go win a national championship unless you introduce the promotion relegation model that I've talked about many times on the show. Because the financial disparities between the Group of 5 and the television money and NIL money that they're working with compared to what the Power 4 are working with, these are not the same. These are not even close to the same. So you can put together a good team. Boise State last year was better than a lot of Power 4 programs. But that was as good as that Boise State team could have been. And though they were respectable in their game against Penn State, who were into the Final Four of the college football playoff, that was the best Boise State team you could have had. I don't know that they beat Ohio State or that they could have beaten Notre Dame we'll see how they do against Notre Dame this year. But can the Boise team get better than that? Perhaps. We've seen it before, way back in the day when they were in the WAC. They had early season non-conference games, and they beat Georgia. Are we in that sort of era? Kind of remains to be seen. TBD. So for a Group of 5 team, I think that you have to look at it on a program by program basis. But if there are repeated appearances to a certain level in the playoff, yeah, eventually you're going to want to keep going forward. But if you're working at the type of financial disadvantage that every group of 5 team is compared to the heavy hitters in the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, or even several of the teams in the Big 12, I don't know how you're able to put together a roster that can go out there and beat not just one of those teams, several of those teams. Maybe you could pull an upset every now and then. I can see that. But can you go all the way? The NCAA tournament, for instance, think about it like this. And this is the extreme example, but I'm just trying to make the point. Every now and then, a 15 seed can beat a 2 for one game. And we've seen 15 seeds go to the Elite 8. Do you think a 15 seed can win a national championship? No. I think a double-digit seed in NCAA basketball can win a national championship one day. I fully believe that. But there is a line. So figuring out where that line is, I think it can be tricky. But right as the finances in college football are currently constructed, no, I don't think a group of 5 team can ever reasonably have the goal, because the money has exploded so much from those days where Boise State beat some of the biggest brands in college football. I don't think you can see a day in which they could build a roster that can go win several games like Ohio State did last year in the college football playoff. So, hope that answers your question. Good way to end today's show with a little G5 talk. And it's technically the G6 once the Pac-12 rolls around next year, but, there are 18 teams in the Big Ten. So, G5, it's a branding thing. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.